All right. You guys can see my screen. Okay, everything looks right. Supreme. Excellent. Hi, good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Green. Thank you so much to Center for Regional Food Systems and the Good Food Fund for having me. So it's a real honor. And general note about the presentation. Obviously, we'll have Q&A at the end. If something is burning a hole right through the side of your head and you're like, I need to know now. I have a question very specifically about this. Please throw it in the chat for Becca, and Becca, feel free to stop me and be like, this is a very pertinent question. Just let me know.
I have
But
something. I have something before we start.
yes,
There's already a good burning question, and I just wanted to give context for you. There's a question, does this apply to cottage food folks as well? So this you don't have to answer that right now, but I just wanted to add that if you can think about that while you're continuing the conversation, that'd be great. Thanks, Paul.
yes, thank you. Quick answer, yes, it does. Uh, I've built this with a focus on, just for all of you, I built this with a focus on producers because it's the emerging farmer program. But I think one of the coolest things about value chains is that everybody's in it together. We're all in one big value. I think of it more as like a web um, made of chains. So uh, I wanted to start just with this. So connecting the dots in your local food system. This literally, I'll tell you a little bit more about my current like day-to-day work in a moment, but this is literally something that we use. This map is our supply chain at Michigan or at Marrow Detroit Provisions. It's our supply chain, it's our sales outlets, it's our production and our processing, and I sell meat, so it's also our slaughter. Like this, it's literally dots on a map, and a lot of what we're trying to do with value chain, with the coordination of value chains and building value chains, is connecting these dots. So I thought this was a sort of a perfect way to start. So who am I and why am I here? My name is Paul Green. I use he/him pronouns. I'm based in Detroit, Michigan, not far at all from New Center, and live with my wife, two dogs, and a cat. And I am not a farmer. I have never produced my own product. I'm a sales guy, so I've never gone through the entrepreneurship challenges that some of you have worked on, but I talk to you people all the dang time. And so that's where my information has come from, but I'm always open to learning more. I don't suggest that I know everything, and I'm really going to talk about what I know and what I feel like has really worked for me and the people that I work with. So right now I'm the sales manager at a company called Marrow Detroit Provisions. We're a butcher shop and restaurant based in Detroit. We work with Michigan family farms to, we do all sorts of wonderful things in the restaurant and at the butcher shop, but I sell a small line of raw beef and pork products to grocery stores, primarily independent, a few smaller chains, but I'm part of a small business. So I do have an understanding of sort of that attitude and that place of work. Um, and I've been involved with value chain coordination for what is it, 2026? So for about 5 years now, in reality, maybe about 5 or 6 years. I started at Taste Local Difference. Shout out to my Taste Local Difference colleagues and former colleagues in this call, and really got to know people. And I'll talk more about that organization. Really got to know people all around the food system, whether it was farmers, growers, retailers, anybody, producers in the Michigan food system, and then was able to do some projects connecting restaurants that were making a hot sauce to Zingerman's mail order to go to national distribution, or helping that same restaurant find produce from a local source. So it really, that was kind of where I entered this work. I also was very lucky to work with some of Shakir's colleagues through the Fair Food Network, helping connect local retailers to local growers. And that was a great learning experience for me as well. So I think one of the biggest things I want to say at the beginning and the outset is the practice in this case makes all the difference. Doing being out in the marketplace, being where you want to be and where you want to be seen and where you want to know people is hugely important. And then before I move on, I want to just acknowledge this is, I'm in Detroit, which is also called Wawiyatanon, which is an Anishinaabe word that relates the place to water. And it was a central meeting place for Anishinaabe people of the Ardawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi. It's really important, especially for a land-based practice like farming, to at least know and acknowledge, I think, that this is not a new space, that we're working in a place that has been growing food and hosting people for a very, 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 very long time. So I want to know briefly who you are and why you are here. You can do this in chat. If you really, really are feeling need to, you feel free to I think raise your hand and I think you'll get permissions to speak. I want to know, I'm curious, one, where you're located around the state, because this is a big, big place. The way we work in Southeast Michigan and the way somebody works in Houghton and the way somebody works in Grand Rapids are very different. I'd love to know if you're currently conducting B2B sales, because I have an idea that that's largely kind of one of the things we're trying to discuss here. B2B being business to business, so farm to another business, not to an end consumer. And then I'm curious what kind of challenges you're facing, kind of what you're hoping to get out of this conversation and this presentation. So I'm just going to open the floor for 2-3 minutes, throw something in the chat. I'll take a look at it. But if you want to raise your hand, that's great too. So, not seeing anything coming up yet. Oh, there we go. Value added through cottage food. Cool. Carla, where are you based? Tina's in Detroit. Hello. Veronica Sheboygan. Okay, very cool, Carla. You're in Detroit. I'm on the west side. So, oh, there we go. Houghton. Coastal Farm. Traverse City. I really like this name, Atomic Squirrel Peppers. Amanda, that's great. This is making me so happy. Dry spicy blends. That's nice. That's easy to ship. Okay. Dearborn. Okay, cool. Network issues. Banglatown. Okay. Wow. Saffron. We have Michigan saffron. Grass Lake. Okay. Thank you so much. Hello, Emily. Yes. Yeah, so Emily is one of my former colleagues at Pace Local Difference. And it's always great to be with everybody. So that really gives me a good idea. Thank you all for sharing this. We can go back through this, and again, there will be plenty of time for Q&A if you want to expand upon kind of what you wrote there. But it seems like we've got farmers, some people who maybe have been in the game and then have come out onto the other side to try and support others. So I think some people that we would consider a value chain coordinator, which is just a very fancy word for somebody who's a networker. And then other people providing services. And then I'm really happy that we've got some cottage food, some value-added producers here as well, because a lot of this is really accepting and embracing the fact that you all are, like I've said, you're kind of in this food web together, this system, where you need to have each other's information, because who knows if the person buying spices is looking for saffron, right? Like that's immediately something that occurs to me. that if you aren't already doing business, it may or may not work, but knowing each other and asking each other questions, whether that you help each other work with contemporaries or you're able to do direct business, this is like core value chain work and core value chain addition. It's just being with other people. So I want to go through this is we just done the level setting. So having an idea of who's here, why you're here, what your needs are, kind of where you're spaced is truly important. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to kind of talk through the differences between what a value chain is and a supply chain. And then I'm going to talk with you about Detroit's supply chain. That's what I've got a lot of experience with. And some of the things that are in our supply chain apply everywhere and some don't. And so hopefully these are very useful things to discuss. And then we're going to go through some alternatives, other models that you may or may, hopefully you're not aware of, but you may not be because you might be very much busy growing food. And discuss some alternative models that exist that you may or may not want to try or be involved with, and then some other resources, because ultimately I want this to be incredibly valuable to you, and I hope it will be. So what is value chain? I'm throwing around this term, value chain, blah, blah, blah. What does it mean? This is a definition that comes from an organization called the Wallace Center. But a value chain is the soft infrastructure in the form of skills, competencies, and relationships that enable individuals and organizations and businesses to access and utilize the hard infrastructure within their communities and regions. So Shakir was talking about the kinds of organizations that they support with the Michigan Good Food Fund. That comprises pretty much all of the players in the conventional supply chain. You've got growers, you've got distributors, you've got wholesalers and retailers, you've got processing and people doing any number of things along the supply chain to get the food to a mouth to be eaten. Because that's the supply chain is all the actual physical stops or the sort of basic straight up services that are provided. The value chain is all of the information, the human capital that ferries that food through the supply chain. And so we are the supply chain. This is the the value chain. We are the value. There is inherent value in food. That's a very obvious thing, I think, to hopefully all of us. But we all are providing the value that makes it hopefully financially viable to sell, because it does need to be profitable all the way along for it to be resilient and stay. But also, the people are the ones with the ideas, the marketing concepts, the new product development, the relationships that are going to bring a product from a field to a grocery store shelf or to a person's dinner table. So these are the main elements of the food system is the production, and it's got to go somewhere. It may or may not need to be processed in some way. Whether that's a wash pack for the farmers, that's processing. I mean, I think you probably know this. We have to sell the food. It doesn't, unfortunately, always sell itself. So that's the marketing. You've got a retailer that is whether you're acting as a retailer or if you're selling to another business to sell, they've got to do that work. And then preparation, consumption. And then this is also really important as well, is the resource and waste recovery, because we've put all this value from growing to getting it on someone's plate into, let's say, a carrot. If half that carrot gets eaten, there's a lot left. And so one of the last jobs I had, actually my last position before this, was working for a nonprofit focused on food waste reduction. So we'll talk about that as well, because there are parts of that you should also be considering from an environmental standpoint, and also to make sure that you know who is in your community. So this is kind of just discussing, again, infrastructure versus people power. So the shared, I think, so obviously conventional supply chains favor large businesses under the assumption that scale offers increased efficiency and lower costs, which it often does. And that is great and wonderful, but we're small businesses, and so we're struggling with that. That's something I struggle with my business every day. Is that my prices are too high for what the retailers want, and the cost of distribution is high because we're not selling hundreds of cases a week by any stretch of the imagination. It's a small business, and so we can't actively access the benefits of a larger business would be able to get to. Healthy food system, as I said, value chains rely on shared values. And I wanted to really emphasize that we are that can be a number of different things. And relationships to connect people with the resources they lack, often access to the supply chain. So like I said, the value chain enables you to access the supply chain. And I apologize for my error period there on that slide. Shared values, I think in this room, this digital room, are a commitment to local food, so Michigan grown food, or even potentially hyper local food when possible. So really, if you're in Houghton, trying to keep your food in the UP because there's a lack of, there's not a lack of produce, but there is, as far as volume goes, like it can feel that way. So really focused on local food, focused on reducing environmental impacts, and being part of a system that values people and product and not just money first, money first. It's an incredibly important part of things. If you want to run a business, it's got to be profitable eventually. A lot of them are not for a long time. So if you're not profitable yet, don't worry. That's something I can say for sure. Don't worry, it's not over. Keep going. But the shared values are what are going to allow you to build the relationships and keep them. And actually, I think Becca was sharing an anecdote with me earlier. If you would quickly just say that again to the whole group.
Sure. Yeah. I was just saying that sometimes when you own a food business, you feel guilty about spending time building those relationships. Like there's always something else you should be doing, whether it's being in your farm or spending more time in the kitchen or HR or payroll, whatever it is. And you kind of feel guilty about building these relationships and spending the time in the spaces that just feels fun. But instead, you're really working on your business. You're building that infrastructure between people. And it's not just transactional. It's all about the relationship at that point. So that is to say, I found that out. That was like a lesson that was hard to learn. And maybe I still haven't fully learned it, but that sometimes doing that hard work or that easy work kind of makes you feel guilty. And don't let it. You're working absolutely on the business.
Thank you. Yeah. Every time, once in a while, Becca and I will be able to grab coffee and catch up. And I'm like, is this work? Is it? Yes, it is. Here we are. And it's a funny thing, like to become friends with somebody that you work with. That I think the reason I wanted to discuss that now is because the shared values and like caring about the Detroit food system and about local food and healthy food system, that's the basis of our relationship. But as a result, I can call Becca and say, hey, do you know this person? Or I'm looking for this, or my friend or colleague or client is looking for this. Any ideas? And that's totally fine with her. And that is the value of the relationships. And I'm going to keep saying that's like the basis of all this is the relationships. So I'm going to walk you through now sort of the Detroit supply chain. It's wild and crazy. I learned a ton of things when I started to see it and learn about it. This is all of the stuff that people don't know about the grocery store. Where does the food come from? How does it get there? Who's selling it to me? And having a good and deep understanding of these supply chains will allow you to either compete with them, access them, or you kind of come up with other additional infrastructure, forms of infrastructure or sales that are going to work really well alongside them. So I don't need to explain what food production is. You all know what food production is. You produce food. So you grow food, you make food, you have a product, whether it's a carrot or spice rub or sausages. You have something, and now we need to find a way to make it work. Because unfortunately, we need money to live. So, a wholesaler, and this is a point of confusion for many people, including me. Sometimes I had to triple check that I had this definition correctly. Wholesalers are people who, or organizations, businesses that aggregate, and that is their value that they are adding to the product. So the picture that you see here is actually the second line here. So this is the Detroit Produce Terminal. This is in Southwest Detroit on 4th Street and Green. You can go and check it out from the road. You are not allowed inside unless you are, I mean, I'm sure if you called and you were curious, they'd probably have someone ferry you through, but this is not a public space. That said, you'll see, I don't know how, I can't count, 60 trucks idling on 4th Street at any given time, especially in the middle of the night. Those are all reefer trucks getting ready to take food out of this building and deliver it all over the city. Or they may have been bringing that food. So this is a cross-docking facility. Cross-docking is where product comes in, it gets reorganized and sold out as things are aggregated, literally, as opposed to a truck going somewhere, stopping, and potentially picking something else up and then continuing on. This is a 10-house co-op. Sorry, I skipped it. I just went with the picture first. So this is now made up of 10, they call themselves houses. These are relatively small family businesses that buy product from growers anywhere. There's a business called Royal Banana. They specialize in bananas and exotic fruits, and they'll have some of your day-to-day produce, like regular produce as well, though bananas are the single highest mover in the produce section of pretty much any retailer, like regular retailer in the country. But you've got Ram Produce. They specialize in tomatoes. You've got Sarah Produce. They're kind of an everybody, and they'll cover every sort of produce. This market is done at night, and trucks from all over the country or all over the continent really might even come in. They are going to drop off, and they are going to sell produce directly from a farm or potentially from a distributor who's working on behalf of the farm to these businesses. And then either a food distributor or a small business will come to this market in the middle of the friggin' night, and they will make orders. They will walk through and they will say, I'm looking for bananas. What's your price? I'm looking for this. What's your price? They can look at and touch apples and say, I don't like this lot. I'm going to go to the next people down the lot. And as you can see, this is it's actually 2 buildings. There's kind of a channel down the middle. There's train tracks there. So a lot of the produce used to come in on trains. It's kind of cool. And so this is a massive market for large or even medium retailers to access and get produce. So this is a place where you're going to find figs, and you will also find Michigan tomatoes and Michigan apples. Can't actually grow figs in Michigan, probably not for retail, but you're not going to get a banana in this state. And so you're going to get any kind of produce at pretty much any time. This can be a place where local produce is accessed or not. They'll have both. Detroit's Eastern Market, many people know about Saturday morning. It's really fun and romantic and sweet. You walk, you get there at 6 a.m. and you get to chat with all the vendors as they're setting up. And if you're there at 10, it's a madhouse and there's people everywhere and it's fun and it's exciting and it's a tourist thing, but it's all about food. And if you get there late in the day, the farmers are wrapping up. They're tired. They've been there since 2 in the morning. That's really wonderful. That is very specifically for consumer facing. They also, many people do not know, they also have a commercial market. It is changing a little bit, but they are between midnight during the growing season, the Michigan growing season, which can be about April to November-ish. From midnight to 6 a.m., it is a wholesale market. It looks a lot more like the inside of this produce terminal building. And you've got farmers, large farmers, and some smaller ones coming, and they set up, they take pallets, they've got a desk on a pallet with a computer, they take it out of their truck with a high-low, they put it down on the ground, they get all their cases out, and anybody with green money or a credit card can walk in there from midnight to 6 a.m. on primarily Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, and you can buy wholesale produce. So you can get a great deal on usually conventional Michigan produce. So you've got large farms selling at, like, they have these other outlets. I think if you're a small farmer in this conversation, this is not a place that would be functional for you to sell, both because the price that people, the wholesale buyers, so the retailers who are shopping here, they need a lower price, but not always. And this is a place where people can come and get a lot done quickly. That said, there are some exciting changes going on with how Eastern Market also functions within the wholesale produce section. So that's what I'm talking about now here with Market Shed 7. They have purchased a shed. The large buildings are called sheds that used to belong to a large potato farmer whose name escapes me. And it is a giant refrigerator building. And so it's got loading docks, it's the whole thing. But the market, as a nonprofit, has purchased this building and is creating their own aggregation experience, sort of like a food hub. Ultimately, it kind of is a food hub. For some reason, Eastern Market has never wanted to say we're a food hub. I think, yeah, Becca's sort of smiling. I'm not sure why they haven't really wanted to engage in that work. They are a farmer's market, but they're realizing that the farmers, especially people like you all in this conversation, and a lot of others, need a food hub. And a hub truly is a central place. It's like that simple. And so Shed 7 has been purchased by the market and is being refitted specifically to serve Detroit farmers, farmers of color, women farmers, and value-added producers, and be a place where the Detroit producers, so if you're not in Detroit, sorry, but I don't know, if you're willing to bring it here, they might work with you, can store their product for greater sale. So to access that chain of, like, where's one place that somebody can go for everything? Because aggregating market wholesalers, it's all about convenience. It's all about a shopper or a grocery store or really anybody who's looking to purchase something at scale to go to one place to get a lot of things. Just like we often will go to a grocery store to get bread and bananas and toilet paper. Like that's the benefit. So if we can access that kind of that part of the supply chain through our own new ideas, something like the Shed 7 work, that's how we can work in it. We need to do it. And so this is value chain at work. Becca, maybe you know people who have been truly involved. Patrice Brown is one person who has been pushing this idea for a long time. She was working in food access at the Detroit at Eastern Market for years and years. She now is the director of urban agriculture for the city. And so these are the people who have been working, her, Tefira Rushton. I wouldn't be surprised, Becca, if you've had something to do with this as well, who have been working to put together a space because Detroit's producers need a central location to sell from. And so this has been a long time coming. It's really exciting that it's happening. I believe it is supposed to be ready for this growing season. And so as this moves forward, I encourage all of you, no matter where you are or what business you're in, to take a look at it, because this will be an example of an organization doing the work that is absolutely necessary, expensive as all get out, but absolutely necessary to make the food system work. We have to do it together. And it's been, probably a decade coming. This is not a new idea. So what is a distributor? So a distributor often engages in a wholesaling practice. They are ultimately, though, the transportation. And in my experience, this is the ballgame. Farmers have produce. Retailers want to buy it from you. Getting it there is where all the costs come in that make it not viable for price. And it's time. To grow food is one thing. To distribute food to a farm or to another store, to get it across the state is a whole different, it's ultimately actually a different business. And so that's what these distributors do. is they are moving the food. They are the trucks on the road. They often do wholesale. So just very quickly, these are not businesses that I think you should necessarily work with. They probably are not, but they have salespeople, and they are to look at them and learn about them and see what they do is, I think, valuable, and to just even know who they are, because you see food reefer trucks or refrigerator trucks on the road constantly. What is going on? This is it. So you've got national broadliners like Sysco. This is for retail specifically, so grocery stores or markets. Sysco, UNFI, US Foods, these huge companies. Sysco is a wholesaler. Sysco is also a distributor. I actually think all of these companies are wholesalers. So they're not going, they might go to the terminal, but they also have central warehouses somewhere in Kansas, I don't know, that they are selling to everybody everywhere. It's not specialized, it's not local. Many times they won't even be able to define during Michigan Blueberry Series season if those blueberries are coming from Michigan. Those might go to a distribution center in Kansas, and by the way, no shade to Kansas, it's just central. Might go to Kansas, get put into the hopper with all, put into the cold fridge with all the blueberries, and then they're just blueberries. They're produced in the USA blueberries. So that's the way that these organizations function. And then for food service, you've got GFS. They also have their own retailers. So Gordon Food Service is a really interesting thing, because they took their distribution concept and they said, wait, so they sell primarily to restaurants, not grocery stores. That's a different way of doing business. But they said, we also have so much stuff. We're selling, the restaurants want packaging and toothpicks and tablecloths, as well as food. What if we also had them come to us? So they open stores as well. And those are really important places. If you own a restaurant, you almost certainly go to a GFS if you're in market. Continental, Sysco also does food service. Sysco's the biggest. Sysco's the baddest. And they've got, man, do they have resources? And they've got it down pat. They are a giant business, but ultimately they're providing a very simple service of wholesaling food and other products. So broadline means that it's not only food, but also your plates and silverware, potentially. They do it all. And they're doing that because people want convenience. People need convenience. And that's how their business model works. More regionally, we've got something more like specialty. So specifically for produce, because you're going to have all kinds of specialties. People will do produce, they'll do seafood, they'll do meat, they'll do bread. Rockies, Abro is actually directly across the street from the produce terminal. So that's an interesting thing. You're like, oh, they wanted to make a short connection to their supply chain. Regio is both a distributor and is a business. I believe they're one of the houses inside the produce terminal. So you've got people doing multiple parts of the supply chain. And then for food service in Detroit, Delbane. If you didn't know it's pronounced Delbane, it's Delbane. I had an argument with my mother once about this. It's pretty funny. So Delbane, Frog Holler, they're based, they were at least used to be based in Washtenaw County. I believe they've moved to the market. LaGrasso, and so on. So you've got, Leonardo's Produce and Miss Sherry, all of these small businesses that are getting food from A to B. And they are going to either the produce terminal or Eastern Market generally to get produce and then sell it or distribute it, to grocery stores. They are oftentimes the salespeople. So almost always your distributor is also another aggregator or another wholesaler. And these are places where we're losing profit for farmers, which to me, that's one of the values I share. I forgot to say at the beginning, thank you for making food or growing food, especially if you're a farmer, because without farms, we have no food. And so I always think this is like a truly important thing to consider is if we don't have a local food system, that means we don't have local food. And we are at the whim of the greater market. And that is not somewhere I want to be. I've been talking a lot. Becca, is there anything that people are like, ooh, stop?
Ooh, we have a hand raised. Oh, maybe that was an accident. I just saw it disappear. Um, okay, well, if you wanted to raise your hand, I missed who that was, so please raise it again if you have something to say. One thing I did put in the chat, similar to Eastern Market, but not quite on Eastern Market scale because it's huge and old. There are other food hubs, food clubs, food co-ops, and farm stops around Michigan, and I put a link in the chat to the directory for those.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely going to discuss that later, but yeah, I think that's a good timing as well. Thank you. Um, and then people who are purchasing wholesale. And the reason, by the way, I'm focusing on wholesale is because I'm guessing that if you're trying to sell something at the farmer's market, you've accessed your local farmer's market and you've called them. You either already are a vendor or you know how to do that and you've chosen not to do it for a certain reason. If that is where you're at, just as a quick aside, if you want to sell the farmer's market because that's the stage of the business you're in and you haven't, just apply for your farmer's market. Actually, it's mid-March, so now is the time to get in touch and make sure that you're in the market. So if you are looking to sell the farmer's market this year and you've never done it before, now is the time. Get in touch with the market manager, whether it's run by your city or a nonprofit. Call them because you're always going to get the most for your food if you sell it direct. But it's a challenge because you have to grow it, get it to the market, spend the time at market instead of working on the farm. So wholesaling is a different thing because this is ultimately kind of your customer. Once it's here, you're done. Once you've gotten the food to a retailer or wholesale sale purchaser, that end provider before the consumer, then you've done it, and you can go back to work. So for retail, they're adding value by merchandising often. That means they're making it look pretty. This is why it needs to be, if you're growing beets, you need to get the dirt off of them, but maybe not all of it to make it look fancy. These grocery stores, food banks don't merchandise so much, but they do often sort of aggregate food and then pack and maybe make a box. But grocery stores spend a lot of time making the food look good. They do a lot of that marketing, whether that's the kid stacking oranges into a perfect pyramid or the owner, saying to a producer, "Hey, do you have a nice display for me to put all this ice cream in?" Making it look good for the consumer is a necessary evil. I wish that people would just buy food because it's good. They know it's good and it's inherent value, but they don't. And so at a grocery store, there's an incredible amount of value that is done by merchandising. If you think your grocery store partners or wherever you shop are making a ton of money, I promise you, if they are, I've got questions. I think a lot of people do, but they're not. All of their wealth and capital is tied up in the store. Just like if you're a farmer, I'm guessing most of your capital is in the land. They have to move that product. And so they are really focused on, like, a great grocery store has a ton of staff because they're keeping it looking perfect and clean all the time. And that's a big value to sell your product. And so they need to be paid for it. At the same time, they can't pay too much for the product. And then within the food service sort of side, you've got restaurants, institutions like hospitals or universities that are buying enormous amounts of food, but who may have very specific needs. They may want low fat, low salt. They may have a value like local food. The University of Michigan has an excellent food program in their cafeterias, and they are able to access a lot of food. They also have a very good waste reduction strategy. So you could have a very large, for all intents and purposes, the University of Michigan, like, cafeterias are effectively a for-profit business. They have values that are aligned with us in this room. So thinking about that as a potential, you never know. Caterers and private chefs, and then food trucks. So the smaller they are, the easier they are to access, and the more likely we are to have the proper scale. But everybody's on the table. So that's another thing I want to mention. At all times, everybody will talk to you. If you're feeling unsure or a little intimidated about going to a business, whether it's a local grocery store or the University of Michigan, just call them. They're just people too. They may be incredibly busy. They may function in a somewhat cutthroat way, but they're going to let you make your pitch. Their response to that, I cannot promise or give you any real insight in, but they are usually going to hear you out if you have your pitch together. You have to, however, have a lot of consistency. So before you do that, this is a thing I just want to mention, is that you need to figure out what you're selling. You need to know the value of it. And then organizations that I'll refer to later in this conversation can help you do that so that you can sell it properly. But you have to work with a great level of consistency and clarity to get into this side of the business of selling produce. So that was a lot. How does it work? Why does it work that way? Thank you for coming to my TED Talk about that. But what we're really interested in is all of these coordinators, all of these organizations and people who are going to help you connect to and through the value chain and access that supply chain or build your own. So you've got food hubs. Like I mentioned before, there's a food hub network. There are all sorts of, they look a number of different ways. Argus Farm Stop in Ann Arbor calls itself a food hub. They work directly with farmers and they also then redistribute food through online sales. The Eastern Market has a different idea. They're really looking to be more of a hub that's not focused on sales. A food hub can look a lot of different ways. Ultimately, it's an aggregation of food with the goal of enabling the people that they're storing food for to then access greater markets. Aggregators might be a wholesaler. It could be a small business that's really looking to, like I'll talk about on the next slide, that's looking to sell produce directly to consumers. But truly, the simple concept of aggregating or bringing food together, those people buy their very spot in the supply chain. They know people. And so they know who to call, or they have ideas, they have contacts. Distributors, same idea. They're the ones getting the food to places. So they're going to know people everywhere they're going because they've got to have a business contact. So those are people who can help make a connection. Oh, I have a product. I need to find a buyer. And they can do that. That's the value chain connection there. Nonprofits, obviously, like Fair Food Network. That's kind of, for me, in my space, the biggest one, but also, Eastern Market is a nonprofit. Most farmers markets are nonprofits, in my experience, if they're part of the next one, a local government. Local governments are also really important. They might be a source of funding. They may also, in some cases, just be a good place to meet and talk with your contemporaries. So they could run a farmers market, but they could be a place for you to sit down in your community and ask people. That might be where you run into the grocery store. You know what I mean? Like, this could be the place that you are able to talk to the mayor, or it might be a place that is a hassle for you. Like in Detroit, if you wanted to sell eggs, for instance. We just finally passed a livestock ordinance in the city. For a long time, the government was a hindrance. But they can be a really cool place for value chain coordination. And that's a place that you can also raise questions to try. It's a slow process, but you can really make things happen. Extensions are not exactly nonprofits, but they're incredibly valuable. So Michigan State Extension, I'll just quickly note that those are generally from land-grant universities. Land-grant universities, I learned recently, doing just like a little bit of a deep dive for this, land-grant universities literally were granted land there by the American government to then sell and establish the universities. I always just thought they were given land. It was like, here, build a university, but it's not. So important thing to know about, and I'm sure the extension has grappled with this a bit, but this is all land oftentimes taken from indigenous peoples and then sold to other people to raise money for a university. It's an interesting thing to know, but I think it's important to reckon with, that's how these things came about. That said, land-grant universities are run by incredibly intelligent, wise people and are incredibly useful. So you'll see later, one of the resources that I think is truly important is part of MSU Extension. MSU, and to be clear, I am a big supporter of MSU Extension. The land-grant university was a long time ago, that entire process. And then individuals. I sometimes engage in value chain coordination. I was just at a food show. Carmela is one of the local retail, usually generally value-added food distributors. And I was at a food show talking with people I've known for a long time, asking questions, talking about things that are exciting to me, meeting with my accounts. These are that's something that I can do, something that Becca can do, something that Jazmin can do. So if you whether you're acting in sort of like as part of an organization you're part of, but you might just meet somebody on the street and start chatting and you go, wait a minute, your dad owns a farm? How do they sell? So that's what I mean by individuals. It could be anybody, but it can be anybody at any time. I think it's really cool. So sorry, I need to get going a little
Hey,
longer.
hey, Paul. We also had a comment that just mentioned TLD, by the way.
Hey, what is
I
the?
didn't know if you wanted to shout out TLD as a value chain coordinator.
They are on the slide after this one.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you. Um, so a couple of models that are already in existence that if you don't know about them, if you do, I'm not trying to patronize, by the way. If you don't know about them, gosh, do I want you to know about them? But they're really interesting. So farm stops, the best known farm stop, I think probably at this point in the country is Argus Farm Stop in Ann Arbor. They have really done a wonderful job of building out this concept, and they have an annual conference. We've just missed the one that we just had the one that they do annually. It's usually in the late winter, but they are really great. And Argus, the people who run Argus are the reason that I'm in this position and in this industry at all. But generally, it's a consignment model. So the farmer keeps ownership of the produce, or in many cases, like I work with Argus as a meat wholesaler. And so we maintain ownership of our sausage. They tell us what they need, but we own it. And then at the end of their sales cycle, they have a 2-week cycle, they pay me for what they sold. And we get their breakdown is 70-30. And that allows farmers to access a way greater amount of revenue from their product because the organization, the business, it is a for-profit business, but it's a limited profit business that the business would otherwise have to spend buying and losing product because there's always waste in a retailer. So they eat a lot of the reason that they need to take more margin traditionally is because they're going to lose some of the food. The carrots at the bottom of the stack are not going to get sold. They're not going to look good. And so they have to eat that. Argus doesn't do that. Because they don't own it, farmer takes all the risk, but they get a way bigger reward. The last number I heard about what a farmer usually makes from $1 at a conventional grocery store is 15%. So from 15 to 70 is a marked difference. And they have 100, I believe the last time I asked about this, they had a 100 farm waiting list to be working with them. But if you grow something different, like saffron, they're gonna want to listen. They are not the only one. Lakeshore Depot in Marquette, Agricole in Chelsea, the Lively Neighbor in Northwest Michigan. I know there are more, and there can be more. Ann Arbor is a really good place to do this because there's a relatively affluent, highly value-aligned consumer in Ann Arbor, but it can be done differently in different places. And I really think it's a beautiful, beautiful idea and concept. It puts the farmer first. There are also delivery models. So this gentleman at the top is a man named Channing Duker. He's a colleague of mine in the Detroit supply and value chain. He is a coder who is really interested in solving food distribution issues with local food. So he is a computer guy. Most of the people I think I interact with in this industry don't know the first thing, or maybe know the first thing, don't know the second thing about how to write code. And so because this is his interest, I think I've always thought of him as an incredibly valuable person in our industry because he can do things that others of us would do. We don't even know how to ask for. But he goes, well, I can write code for that. And so he has a business called Good Pluck, where he buys usually at the Eastern markets, wholesale market, but often also just directly from farmers. And people will order on, I think it's Thursday, or they'll order on Friday. He'll go buy on Saturday and deliver on Sunday. So he doesn't ever buy more than he needs, which means he's able to really reduce his exposure of like losing money or losing product. And he's able to keep his prices lower, and people can get exactly what they want if they just want to pay for delivery and want hyper local produce, which is like what his focus is. It's really cool. but he also is focused on he really wants to try and bring more value and add other local products. So like he could also start bringing pet food. He could also not necessarily from like Walmart, but if we've got local producers, he could be a really amazing customer for that Shed 7 product because he can go one place and get all his Detroit stuff at wholesale instead of retail. And then obviously food hub programs like Flint Fresh is really, really cool thing happening in Flint. They deliver during the season, they deliver local produce, but the rest of the year they also sort of will just deliver any number of any different sort of food to people at their homes. So you can get a frozen box, you can get a meat box, and that's something that they're doing as a nonprofit, very focused on trying to bring food to people, like good food. And it's not just crap. It's not Uber Eats. If you have not considered a CSA, community supported agriculture, consider it. It's not right for everybody, but it's a really good way to try and support your bottom line. Take some money at the beginning of the season. You're working immediately with people who are value aligned. If they are interested in a CSA, they are going to want you to succeed badly. They want your farm or your company to do well. And so you can get some much needed early season capital and then have a great source of people to sell to. They are going to be likely to buy additions to their regular CSA. It's a really cool way of doing things, and it can work quite well. And then there are farm collaborations here in Detroit. Beaverland Farms on the west side, Fisheye, very central. It's even a neighborhood called Core City, and Coriander they work together and they sell and they split the labor. So Beaverland has a little very cute farm stand. Andy at Fisheye handles a lot of their wholesale work. Coriander has a restaurant that is part of the same business. So they have this really cool model. Don't be afraid to try and put something together like that wherever you are, or access something that may already exist. They're not the only collaboration of farmers in Michigan. There's no chance of that. So I thought I'd use the word bevy because it felt good. There are so many organizations and businesses that you can turn to try and connect these dots. First and foremost, the Good Food Fund, that's access to capital. It's also access to expertise and people who, Shakir and his team will have worked with people who are in a similar situation to you in the past, and they're going to have learnings and they're going to have contacts to help you, whether it's the CDFI partner or just someone in your community who might be able to help you in another way. The Center for Regional Food Systems is hard to overstate the value that you guys provide. Becca, Jazmin, and anyone else who's on the call who's part of CRFS. It is, truly difficult to overstate the value. It's in the name, the Center for Regional Food Systems. So call them. If you have a question that you've been worried about asking them, ask them. Do not be afraid to come to them with ideas or questions. And if they don't have an answer, they're going to refer you to somebody who does. Or they're going to be your thought partner. Other organizations that you really should consider reaching out to, it can be daunting, but the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, MDARD, they've got people who are literally tasked with giving grants. Call them, ask for help. I think MIFS, I don't know if anyone from MIFS is in the call, Michigan Food and Farm Systems. They're also involved in this, putting together these webinars. They exist, as far as I understand, almost one of their primary functions is to help people access these grants and these programs, and it's incredibly helpful. So MDARD is accessible to you, whether it's through an organization or directly. The hands and the beat is a symbol for the Detroit Food Policy Council. Check with the local food policy council around you, whether it's regional for Northeast Michigan, Detroit, Grand Rapids. Get involved. It can be slow. Policy is not something that changes quickly, but your active involvement in a food policy council can help make sure that the policies that are implemented in your community reflect what you need and what is actually going to be good for a farmer or producer. The Fair Food Network, Shakir mentioned earlier, is a really great organization. So in addition to the work that he's doing on the Good Food Fund and the Fair Food Fund, they also help They also run a Double Up Food Bucks, and so they help administer that program, which has a focus, at least used to, I believe it still does, has a focus on local food and support. Those are people who are in grocery stores all the time. If you want to sell at a grocery store that provides food incentive, value incentive, to help people who don't have as much cash or resources access good food, call them. They have a list of who you can work with. The Michigan Farmers Market Association is exactly what it sounds like. They are not a trade group. They're a statewide organization that helps farmers markets do a great job of being a farmers market and allows them, they have trainings. It's a really great organization. They can help you access. If you're having trouble getting in touch with your local farmers market, they can help. The Michigan State University Product Center. This is a really cool place. They help people with value-added products take them to market. So if you have an idea, it's literally from conception to retail shelf, it can be hard. They are gonna, it is incredibly inexpensive. Like I think it's like $50 at the beginning, but they will help you build a product, market it, make sure it's properly food safety certified, learn about packaging, access the whole thing, help you do food science research. They can bring you through the whole process. And they have a really cool show called the Making It in Michigan every April in Lansing. If you can go to that, even if it's not necessarily direct to what you are doing, going to that would be a value chain activity, because you might meet somebody else who's making things in Michigan who is looking for plums, or I almost said dates, no dates, carrots. They might be saying, I have a Michigan product, I want to use Michigan produce. Go have those conversations. So the product center is really cool. Call them and ask. Call and ask, do you have anybody in your pipeline who's looking for Michigan carrots or saffron? Just ask them. They might go, oh, actually, I was just talking to one of our clients. And then on the other side, Michigan CSA Network, that is definitely a really cool place if you want to list. If you start a CSA, make sure you're involved there so they can help you put it together and market it properly. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation is run by the state to help boost economic growth in the state. They aren't in any way focused specifically on food, but they are involved and they want to be involved. And they've got people all over the state trying to help them, like really trying to help boost the economy and help sales grow at all times in all ways. The Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association, that's someone to just call and say, do you know anyone who's looking for this? Or I have a list of your members in this area to go talk to. Do you have someone do you know who I should call at this restaurant? That's what they can do or hotel, lodging, can be very valuable. And then honestly, this is not biased, this is from my experience, taste the local difference. So Emily is on this call. Next week, Erica Tebbins, her colleague, is providing the marketing webinar because they are not specifically in one part of the industry. So Taste Local Difference provides marketing services for local food businesses. So that could be a farm, could be a retailer, could be a value-added producer or a restaurant. They know everybody or have been trying to know everybody. And so they can sell you. It might be that you need a website developed. They can do that for you, but they are value aligned as opposed to whatever ad company wants to sell, Squarespace. They know what you're going through and they really want to support you. And so they can connect you to others in the supply chain and in the value chain to enable you to do the business you need to do. I can't overstate the value of just having somebody who just, what's your role? Oh, we know everybody. That was a really cool place for me to start. That's how I got involved in this work. I'm sure I'm forgetting some organizations. And then I'm just coming back to this. You are the value chain. It's you. I almost included, I don't know if anybody here likes Taylor Swift. I almost put on this, it's you. Hey, you're the value chain. It's you. Like, I cannot say how much, like, you are everything. Without us, without the people, the individuals with the ideas and the creativity and the drive and the skills, nothing happens. Maybe there's some like very profitable food happening in the world on big trucks from who knows where. The value chain is made up of people. So talk to the grocers, eat at restaurants, and after you eat at the restaurant, if it's in your area or you want to sell to them, give them a call. Say, hey, I had dinner and I thought it was great. By the way, I grow food. Are you looking for food? They are. They're a restaurant. Whether it will work financially is a whole different question, but give yourself an opportunity to have the conversation. Walk up to the grocery store counter and say, who do I talk to about who buys produce? Just ask. They're nice. They want to sell good produce. Man, do they want to sell good food. Grocery stores love selling good food. And so they'll be creative and they'll be a great partner with you. Put ideas on the table in your community, whether it's at a community meeting, at a farmer's market meeting for all the vendors, a block club meeting, anything. Hey, does anybody have a truck? You never know who's got a refrigerator truck in their barn. Like, it's surprising sometimes. Share. You are not in this alone, so you can't act that way. Do not, obviously, if you need to compete in a marketplace to succeed, you have to. You do that. But I really will encourage you not to compete with others in the local food value chain and in the local food system, because ultimately there is enough consumer demand. The challenge is getting things to them. That's the hard part. But good things will always have a market. And then truly rinse and repeat. Just keep doing it. You just keep having the conversations. It's like you end up having the same conversation over and over. You check in. How's it going? You see somebody on the street, take 2 minutes, say, hey, what's up? How's it going? Anything new? It is valuable. It will keep you involved. It will keep you in touch. And it's also like, for me, this is how I go through my life. I want to know how people are doing. And as a result, we talk, we share information, and I'm able to then provide value to others by sharing it again. And then here are a few really fun references. So the Wallace Center, they have these value chain coordination quick sheets. So if you want to be a value chain coordinator, these are some really cool resources that exist for you to just learn about how to do that well. They have a very specific parlance and way of talking about it. I didn't find all of it necessarily applied directly to me, but it's a cool thing to look at and really to get, kind of like really in your head about like, how should I go about this? It's very systematic. For the Love of the Chip is a really cool video that I saw while researching this, put together by Virginia Extension. I think the University of Virginia. It's about a Virginia-based potato chip company and how they're able to partner with a grower to produce a really great product, and it includes the people involved in the extension, the grower, the retailers as well, and about like, why is this important? So it's just a nice example of how this can work. Taste local difference. We actually, Emily put together she's in this call, put together a marketing series with SARE, so the Sustainable Agriculture and Research and Education organization years ago. It has a really cool series about working, whether it's with restaurants or other wholesalers. It's just about working B2B. The Growing Detroit program from Keep Growing Detroit, I didn't even mention them. Keep Growing Detroit is a really cool nonprofit based in the city that is all about food sovereignty and helping people do their own, make food happen in Detroit. And so they have a garden resource program. If you're in Detroit and you don't know about this, you can get, Becca will really know about this, but you can get produce plants and starts for a very affordable price. They also have a program called Grown in Detroit, where, Grown in Detroit actually offers people who have a garden or a small farm in the city to not have to do their own sales. You bring that product to KGD once you've joined that program, and they sell at the market, and they give you 100% of what they sell it for because they're a nonprofit, so they're doing their own fundraising. Great organization. They also have their own farm. And then the Argus Farm Stop has a whole educational series about farm stops. They have a free 1-hour webinar, and they also have paid opportunities for, if you want to open a farm stop. Really great resource, wonderful people. And so I would say definitely check it out. Thank you for your patience. I've gone over. My apologies. But yeah, I'd love to open it up for Q&A.